All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Women for Kansas Senate District 19 Democratic Candidates Forum. This is hosted by Women for Kansas Lawrence Douglas County chapter. So I want to thank Kelly Wall, who is the leader of that chapter. I'm Ty Edwards. I'm on the executive committee of Women for Kansas. And so I appreciate all of you being here and supporting us in this work. I also want to say that this is going to be recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. So that you can share it, rewatch it, all those great things with other voters in our district. I should also say that on a personal note, I live in this district. So this is really important to me, and I think you'll see how important it is to me in the way that we go through this. Some of you may know that the mission of Women for Kansas is to recruit, motivate, and educate women to actively participate in the process of electing moderates to public office who will advocate for moderate policies. And I think you'll see that in a lot of the work we do, including candidate forums throughout this election season. One of the things I want to say is this Senate District 19 is new. So it is a newly created district in the redistricting that happened in 2022. So I want to show you on the slide. Here, let's advance that slide so you can get a little sense of what we're talking about. One of the things I want to say is on these slides that you'll see on the video and in this forum, all good slides have citations, so I will have citations on these slides. And I also want to thank, you're going to see this over and over, our wonderful news colleagues throughout the state, from Kansas Reflector to Lawrence Times to the Wichita Beacon to LJ World to Capital Journal to Kansas Public Radio. We have many wonderful news sources that cover our state legislature, and I strongly encourage you to support them with your funds if you are able, because we rely on them a lot. So for example, in Lawrence Kansas Times' coverage of this event, they included this map of our new district. So you can see it spans from basically northwestern Lawrence to eastern Topeka and all of the areas in between, like Lecompton, Tecumseh, and the rural areas in between. So just keep that in mind. You may be living in this district and you didn't know it, so surprise. One other thing I want to say is this might seem like a really early moment for us to be having this candidate forum. You may know that June 3rd is the filing deadline to run in this election. And we're hosting this early because we care a lot about elections and we have a bunch of other events coming. So for example, on June 15th at 1:30 p.m. at the Lawrence Public Library, Women for Kansas's Lawrence chapter will be doing a Douglas County Democratic District Attorney candidate forum. So we have a lot going on. We care a lot about these issues, and so we're getting started. That being said, if you got on the Secretary of State's website today, you would see that ShaMecha and Vic are both filed as candidates in District 19, but you might not see Patrick's name showing there. And one of the reasons why is Patrick is running in this election filing via petition, which means you have to get signatures. And he has appointed a campaign treasurer, and his campaign finance reports also appear on another place on the Secretary of State's website, as do ShaMecha's and Vic's. So you can see that information on our Secretary of State website, and Patrick has shared with us that he will complete the process by the June 3rd filing deadline. I guess we should put a giant asterisk here. Other people could still file in the interim. And if that is something you are considering, you should hurry because we are all getting motivated and getting to work. Okay, so the order of events for today, the purpose of this forum is to educate voters about candidates and issues. So one of the reasons why I'm going to be using slides on this is to help us get a handle on some of the issues that are important. This is really important in this candidate forum because this is for a primary, and that election will happen on August 6th. And a lot of times when you're in a primary, there isn't always a lot of separation on the issues, right? A lot of times the candidates from the same party share a lot of the same values and they share a lot of the same priorities. So we are going to focus really closely on issues to help us get a sense of our candidates and get a sense of maybe what makes them distinctive. Then I will transition to the questions on issues. I'm going to briefly introduce our candidates first. They will be able to give you more information about themselves in the last question. I will briefly introduce at the beginning, and then we want our candidates to give us specific responses too to help us understand the differences between all of them. As I said earlier, we will post this forum video on the Women for Kansas YouTube channel. That usually happens within a few days of the event, so watch for that so you can rewatch or check the citations on my slides or share out to your friends and family and neighbors who live in this district. Okay, so let me get started briefly introducing our candidates. Let me turn off the share so you can see them. All right, so our first is ShaMecha King Simms. She is an educator and an advocate who has lived in historic Old Town Topeka for the past 15 years, where she is raising her son. She's also the president of the Historic Old Town Neighborhood Improvement Association. I know in Lawrence, neighborhood associations are really important too. And she is the 2023 chair of the Topeka Citizen Advisory Board. And I should say there's a lot more to know about these candidates. Please visit their websites and learn more as you will in this forum. Then Vic Miller is our next candidate. He is an attorney who has served as an administrative judge, a city councilman, and a county commissioner. He's served in the Kansas House of Representatives off and on from 1979 to the present. He also briefly served in the Kansas Senate when he was appointed to fill former Senator Laura Kelly's seat when she was elected governor. And he is currently the House Democratic leader in the Kansas House of Representatives right now. And then Patrick Schmidt, I'm also descended from Schmidt, so I understand the challenges of saying our names. Patrick Schmidt has lived in Kansas for many generations with his family, and he also served in the U.S. Navy as an intelligence officer. He served on the USS Ronald Reagan and at the Pentagon. He lives in Topeka, and he is currently in the Navy Reserve. So we are super grateful for all of you being here with us. We really want to hear from you. I really want to hear from you, so I'm so excited you're here today. And let's get started on our candidates and our issues. So let me share on slides again to kind of get you started with how we're thinking about this. So again, here's our district, right? We know where we're at. All right, so the first topic we're going to talk about is reproductive rights. Some of you may know that reproductive rights is a really important issue for Women for Kansas. Defeating the August 2022 anti-abortion constitutional amendment was one of our top priorities. And something we are still very pleased that Kansans resoundingly spoke up about and took action related to. Okay, so let's talk about the legislative session this year, though. So laws passed limiting Kansans' reproductive rights in the 2024 legislative session. Here's just some examples, okay? And again, notice I'm using some quotes and I have the citations down below of where I was getting this information. So under House Bill 2749, abortion seekers will have to answer a series of questions before undergoing the procedure, including questions asking them if they have been raped, if they have an abusive partner, and if the pregnancy is the result of incest. You may know Governor Kelly vetoed this, but that was overridden by the legislature. And she said in her veto, the law is invasive and unnecessary. There is also no valid reason to force a woman to disclose to the legislature why she is seeking an abortion. And then House Bill 2436 will create a new felony crime. People who try to force a woman to end a pregnancy despite her expressed desire to give birth could face jail time and thousands of dollars in fines. Governor Kelly also vetoed this, and it was also overridden by the legislature. In Governor Kelly's veto, she wrote, "It is already a crime to threaten violence against another individual. The overly broad language risks criminalizing Kansans who are being confided in by their loved ones or simply sharing their expertise as a healthcare provider." So that's some of the examples of what happened in this legislative session. So that takes me to my question. So in 2022, Kansans voted resoundingly to protect abortion rights in our state. However, the legislature has continued, as we just saw, to attack our reproductive rights. So what is the role of the legislature in reproductive rights? And if elected, how will you work to protect our reproductive rights in that role? So Vic, let's start with you.
Thank you, Todd. First, I want to thank Women for Kansas for hosting this event. I want to thank you for moderating it, and I want to thank Patrick and ShaMecha for agreeing to participate. This is where we need to return to democracy, is having these kinds of forums. People who know me know that I've long been a champion of reproductive freedom. Long before August 2, when I would campaign, I would often get the question, what do you think about abortion? I had a very simple answer, and it was, I think the government should stay out of that. And that was the overwhelming expression by Kansas voters in 2022. Men and women said that the government, particularly here, the Kansas legislature, has no business in that rather difficult decision. It was very clear. Sadly, our Republican supermajority in both the House and the Senate did not get the message. You gave just a couple of examples of that, but there are numerous examples as early as months, literally months after we voted overwhelmingly to protect our constitutional right to make that choice, a choice between a woman and her medical provider. Months later, the pro-life forces began their attempts to chip away at that decision. They know my record, so much so that my last legislative opponent, the Republican opponent, was actually the spouse of the executive director of Kansans for Life. I'm not embarrassed. I'm proud of being a spokesperson on behalf of Kansas women and their right to make that decision. The attitude, the environment that we deal with at the Kansas legislature can be summed up after one of the Republicans who led the fight for one of the bills made this statement. I'm going to read it so I don't misquote it. She said, and this was on the bill that's one of the examples you gave, they call it the Abortion Reasons Bill. She said, the purpose of the bill, we need this information so we can better decide what is good for these women. I need to repeat that. We need this information so we can better decide what is good for these women. That's the whole problem. Republican legislators, and I'm going to be very partisan, and anyone can study the vote count. It's very easy to go on the Kansas legislative site and see who voted for and who voted against these measures. And it is a very clear difference between how Democrats and Republicans vote, not between men and women, between Democrats and Republicans. But this particular Republican, a woman, sums it all up. They did not get the message. They still operate from the position that they know better than the woman herself about what she should do when finding herself in such a situation. You gave a couple of examples there, and sadly, both those bills were overridden. The governor's veto was overridden. The governor just vetoed another one yesterday. These measures are all cleverly disguised as one thing or the other that they're not. But what it comes down to is every single one of them is an attempt to invade, to impede, to interfere with a woman's right to decide for herself.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Vic. ShaMecha, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you. And yes, thank you to Kansas for Women and both Patrick and Vic for being here today. I really appreciate that. It's an honor to get to chat with everyone today. So basically my stance is that I believe in bodily autonomy. My personal experience is that I have supported both people who have had abortions. I had a college roommate. We were 19 and she found herself pregnant and decided that she wanted to go ahead and have an abortion. And my role in that was to help her financially, because obviously as college students, we didn't have a ton of money for such a procedure, and to ensure her travel to Lawrence at that time. There was still a clinic available that were providing abortions. And at that time, as a 19-year-old, I thought that I was doing my duty as a friend. I thought that I was providing support and care by ensuring she could get the procedure done the way that she needed it to be done, and that she could have it safely completed. Some 2 decades later, I found myself pregnant at the age of 34. I was using an app and didn't really realize that my body was starting to change on me, and things that I thought were pretty much a given, like clockwork, suddenly became very up in the air. And that was a very stressful time. I was making just barely over minimum wage. I had to drive myself to the clinic twice, once for the pre-consultation, the other for the actual event, and everything was a blur. I can remember being asked questions and just kind of going through the motions because I just wanted to get the procedure done. And the stress between the point that I found out that I was pregnant and the point that I was able to receive abortion care, that was a wrenching time for me. And so I called that college roommate back and said, I am so sorry that I did not show up for you in the way you needed me to be there for you, because as an ally, I can sympathize, but as a person who is experiencing this, I have empathy because I can feel what you were feeling. I can understand the emotions that you were going through, and I could not relate to you because I had not gone through that personal experience. So to me, the role of the Kansas legislature is to make sure that we continue access, that we make sure that the facilities are appropriately regulated and funded so that they are ensuring the care of all Kansans. Not all Kansans identify as women who get pregnant. We have people who are non-binary and find themselves in that situation. But ensuring that we make that accessible, that it is safe, is the ultimate responsibility of the Kansas legislature. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ShaMecha. Okay, Patrick?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to ShaMecha and Vic for also participating and providing this opportunity for everyone to share their views. I think the role of the Kansas legislature is to respect the voices of Kansans. And in August of 2022, Kansans spoke loudly and clearly. I think by a 22 point margin all across the state, people of Kansas, men and women, said that they want to make these decisions for themselves, not have these decisions made by right-wing extremists in the legislature. And especially with everything that's going on all across the country, it's all the more important that we have allies and partners in the legislature that will respect that view. Unfortunately, Vic has tried to appease right-wing extremists throughout his career, supported the so-called Women's Right to Know Act that was recently declared unconstitutional in October of last year. And these sorts of restrictions, they don't just hurt women, they don't just hurt OBGYNs. They chase out doctors all across the state. They threaten KU Medical Center. They make it harder for young people in Kansas to start a family, because if there's no OBGYN, then you have to travel, it could be hours to find a provider. And I want the people of the 19th district to know that I will never compromise with right-wing extremists. I will fully support women's access to healthcare, and especially as they target things like IVF and birth control. I'll never compromise. I'll be a loud voice of support for women's healthcare in the legislature.
All right, thank you so much, Patrick. All right, let's move on to our next subject. So I'm going to screen share again so I can show you some more information. Okay, so hold on, let me get that out. All right. Okay. All right, our next subject is going to deal with affordable housing and homelessness in Kansas. So this is a complicated, over many years, right, issue that we would need to talk about, but just a little background for folks at home. So a statewide housing needs assessment in 2021, which the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation said was the first one that had been done in the same comprehensive way in the last 30 years, stated that more affordable housing was needed everywhere in our state, including for middle-income Kansans. And in 2022, the legislature did allocate $62 million in various contexts. It's a little more complicated than that. And again, consult the citations if you'd like to read more, to begin to address this issue. Kansans in 2023, there were over 2,600 homeless people in Kansas, according to a federal report. And as you may know, homelessness in Lawrence, which is where I live, increased by 51% from 2020 to 2023. And of course, we know Topeka has struggled with this issue too. So though bills were introduced in the legislature in 2024 to assist local governments in addressing some aspects of homelessness, and I should note, and criminalizing others like camping, they were never passed. So that brings me to my next question, which is, in what specific ways can the legislature address issues of affordable housing and homelessness in Kansas communities? And ShaMecha, can you go first on this one for us? Do you need help unmuting? Let me see. Try now. Did that work? Is that working? There we go. There we go.
Okay. No, thank you for this question. This is housing is something that I'm very passionate about because it's something that I see with my work as a neighborhood leader on the Citizen Advisory Council. Everyone deserves quality housing no matter where they find themselves in life, whether they've already made it to the point of being unhoused or they are someone who is working and are trying to find the housing that best fits their budget. Basically, what I see in my neighborhood is that people are being forced out because they can no longer afford the rent. You have a lot of out of town, out of state entities that are moving into these areas, well, into District 19, and they're upping the rent based off of these equations that really don't mesh with the income levels that people are actually able to bring home and into their households. We have 9,000, according to the US Census, we have 9,000 families that are cost burdened with housing in our district. 67% of them are renters that are cost burdened, and 33% of the homeowners are cost burdened. So that's a pretty sizable chunk of District 19 that are trying to mitigate this need that is a need by going to food pantries to try to save some money, or trying to cut costs through maybe childcare or transportation, things of that nature, trying to keep a roof over their head. $40 million that would have supported housing initiatives within cities and counties was just stricken from the budget. And that's unfortunate because I know, just speaking from the city of Topeka standpoint, that's money that could have been used to address infill and address rehabs for housing that is reasonable but just needs a little bit of a push. Developers are saying, you know, we need extra funds in order to keep the costs down so that we can make it affordable for folks who do have the income to manage a little bit more closely than families who find themselves unhoused. And so that money, it's unfortunate it didn't make it into the hands of the people who needed it most. And ensuring that those funds are available, that housing trust funds are properly sustained and scaled so that they can start to meet these demands is critical for addressing housing, whether it's affordable or transitional or whatever people are needing in the moment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, ShaMecha. Patrick, how about you?
Sure, absolutely. So, I think that this is a really complex and multi-pronged problem. And we have a lot of housing in Topeka throughout the 19th that does need work. It could work, but it needs a lot of work, especially in my neighborhood in Central Park. And the legislature needs to do more to support things like Topeka Jump, neighborhood-led organizations that are working at the grassroots to support this problem, and also to support public-private partnerships that can get both capital that's available at the state and federal level, and working with local partners to figure out what areas are the best opportunities to improve that housing stock. Too many times right now, I think, especially in Topeka, people are forced to choose between, something that can fit their budget, but isn't it's in areas that people deem unsafe. I know that frequently in my neighborhood, I think just earlier this weekend, someone tried to set the school right by my house on fire. We need to be supporting public safety at the grassroots in neighborhoods like this, and not force people to choose between affordability and public safety.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Vic?
Well, I want to thank you again for this event. It is unfortunate we don't have anything allocated for rebuttal, given that one of my opponents just blatantly falsified my voting record on a bill. But I'll wait for him to apologize for making that, I'm sure, unintentional error. As far as affordable housing, ShaMecha was mentioning the $40 million that was included in Governor Kelly's budget that was summarily stricken again by the Republicans on the Appropriations Committee. Sadly, the $40 million is just a tad of what we need. If you pull up the Lawrence affordable housing website, under the category of affordable housing just for Lawrence, it's over $217 million. So 40 million was nowhere close to what we need to invest. It was, I think, a good proposal by the governor, because it allowed for local communities to, through a grant process, apply for that money. And I think it would have been a good way to see who was initiating some imagination on how we can address this problem. I think too much of the problem we haven't talked about are the underlying causes of homelessness. It's not just not having a home, it's suffering from mental illness or addiction or alcoholism. One of the things I'm most proud of in my public life is the creation of the mental health court here in Topeka that was designed to keep people out of jail, find homes, find jobs for them, and treat the severe and persistent mental illness that they suffered from. They were not criminals. They were just caught up in a loop. And when we put the court into place, it was amazing the changes in life, that when you actually apply treatment instead of incarceration, how much you can improve the lives of these people. I'm so proud of the fact that Judge Sally Picorni from Lawrence, Douglas County, came to our court to model the now very successful mental health court that they have in Lawrence. So it's more than just building houses. It's getting to the root causes for so many of these people. And there will never be an end to what we need to do at the state level to address those problems that I mentioned.
Thank you very much. All right, so speaking of complex issues, the next one we're going to move on to is tax policy and the state budget, which, is a good segue from what we were just discussing. So let me share screen here so you can see a little bit about these issues. So here we go. Okay, so Kansas tax policy and the state budget in 2024. So the Kansas legislature passed Senate Bill 37, which would change taxation in our state. And this is just some things. And again, I have my citations down here, especially from the Kansas Reflector. And some of the things that are included in that bill would be eliminating the state sales tax on food on July 1, which is a 2% sales tax. I should let you know that was going to sunset already. That was already passed by the legislature, but this moves up the date. Elevate the property tax exemptions from $42,000 to $100,000, and this matters because those property taxes are also tied to public education funding in the state. It would increase the standard deduction and personal exemption on state income tax, and it would lower the state's top income tax rate from 5.7 to 5.57% and lower the state's lowest income tax rate from 5.25 to 5.2%. So Governor Kelly said just this week Kelly said that the flurry of tax reduction bills adopted by the 2024 legislature would create financial problems for the state government within several years, despite the current multi-billion-dollar revenue surplus. She said it could lead to budget problems reminiscent of the administration of Governor Sam Brownback, who led the state into a financial quagmire by aggressively reducing the state income tax without cutting spending. Kelly also said she will veto this bill and call this legislature into special session to pass a different tax cut bill. So this takes me to my question. Women for Kansas, I should let you know in case you don't know, Women for Kansas was founded in direct response to Governor Brownback's and the legislature's crisis created by the extreme tax cuts of his administration. Even today, our number one legislative priority as Women for Kansas, which you can see on our website, is a fair, progressive tax system that adequately funds public services. So my question to you is, now that the governor and the legislature have returned the state to budget surpluses, thank goodness, by the way, what tax policy should be enacted in Kansas? So Patrick, let's start with you.
So, first off, I think about my parents when I'm thinking about this problem. Both my mom and dad taught in Kansas, my dad for 50 years until the day he died, and my mom for 46. And for too long, we've put the tax burden in Kansas on the people that can least afford it. And it meant in my family that my dad had to choose between drugs he needed to survive, take care of his heart disease, his COPD, and taking care of his two kids, taking care of his family, and trying to own his own home. And it's a false choice in the richest country in the world. I was just talking with a guy the other night when I was knocking on doors, and he's trying to start his own business. He's on probation for another couple of years. Can't find employment, so he's trying to start a barbecue company, and he's selling plasma at $40 a pop just so he can get off the ground. One of the things that I hear most when I've been talking to voters is that they really want the governor's tax plan to pass. They need that relief on their property taxes. They don't want their Social Security to be taxed in their golden years. And we need to give tax relief for hardworking while ensuring that our budget stays in the black and that our vital services for the least fortunate, funding for education, for special education is preserved, not just for right now, but for the next generation, for the end of the decade and looking onwards. And unfortunately, the plan that did pass the legislature doesn't do that. I think it threatens to put everything in the red and pretty short order. I think by as soon as 2028. We need to expand the homestead exemption. We need to give more property tax relief for lower and middle income earners. I think we cut property taxes and exempting the first 125,000 for all homeowners. And we need to give meaningful sales and income tax relief too, but it has to be affordable for the long term. We need to accelerate the sales tax cut on groceries, and we need to increase the standard deduction and get rid of the tax on Social Security. I think one of the best ways, you mentioned that Women for Kansas was founded in response to the failures of the Brownback administration. One of the best things that we can do as people that are concerned about moderates is electing more Democrats. And that's only going to happen when we start to elect a new generation of leadership to the Topeka legislature. I think for a lot of these problems, we've had people that have been there for a long time, and they haven't been thinking about the future. And, one of the reasons that I'm so excited about this race is that we have an opportunity to do that. And tax policy is one of the places that we will start.
Thank you, Patrick. So ShaMecha, can we hear from you next, please?
I am probably in the minority in that I think taxes are important because they are providing a common good that people can rely on. It's not something that people have to move into the right neighborhood or be in the right city to access. It's just it's public transportation, it's good schools, it's things that people know that they can count on regardless of their personal ability to be able to provide it. And so I think for me, yes, when the Brownback era was very stressful in the sense from an educational standpoint. I was watching our classrooms just balloon in size. I can remember my own child, they lost a teacher as a result of that those tax challenges. And so they had third graders, 30 in a class. It was chaotic at times. A lot of parents were very concerned, and the response from the school district was, unfortunately, we don't have the funds to bring on an additional teacher. So they had a substitute teacher to take part of the students so that they would get the one-on-one care that they needed. I also support the governor's plan. I thought that it was very wise in the way that it approached giving tax cuts to those who are in the lowest income and those who are working Kansans. I think that's wisdom to ensure that they are getting the bulk of the support and resources as opposed to giving tax cuts to those who are more sustainable in their income level. Yeah, just making sure that the governor is supported in that effort is crucial. And I think that that's probably where I stand on that. Yeah, reducing this tax burden on low income Kansans, particularly in District 19, knowing that many of them are renters and are providing their own level of support of taxes through the purchase of goods, purchase of food. They are sustaining us in a way that is not fair when you really kind of sit back and think about it. So I feel like I should stop there and and just say that I would be very supportive of seeing Governor Kelly's tax plan actually make it into the books. And thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, ShaMecha. Okay, Vic.
Thank you. Probably the greatest day, and in this case, late night that I've ever had in a member of the Kansas legislature was the night we overrode Governor Brownback's veto when we undid the Brownback experiment. Thanks to having done that, and thanks to the fantastic stewardship of our great Democratic governor, Laura Kelly, and now we can have a discussion about tax cuts. The argument now is not over whether we should cut taxes, but just in what way and how much. I was very happy to oppose the Republican plan for a flat tax that directed 70% of the income tax relief to 20% of the people. I was happy to sustain the governor on her veto of the latest bill, and I look forward to the special session that she has promised so that we can come to an agreement and get the tax reductions that people are asking for. I would take issue with the plans that we have been discussing, and that none of them, in my opinion, address the biggest problem we have in the taxation system, and that is high property taxes. Yes, there's some relief in there, but not enough. I would just assume all the relief be directed towards property taxes to make it meaningful for people, given that our taxes on residential property have increased from 35% of the share of property taxes to now over half. That shift is significant. It's why we have so many people who say, please, please do something. I'm very proud of the fact that the Democrat House members introduced a package of measures to do that. I'm very disappointed that they were not taken up by the Republican, again, supermajority. Your question related to the budget, I just want to address in the time that I have left some of my priorities on the budget. Absolutely, one of my top priorities ever since I took my first job in Topeka advocating for higher faculty salaries is that we keep and maintain a robust higher education budget. This is extremely important for anyone wanting to be senator for this district, in as much as both KU and Washburn rely on substantial resources from the state to do the quality work that they currently do. You may have read, those that are watching may have seen an op-ed that I wrote. Another one of my priorities in spending is to address the IDD waiting list. The intellectual developmental disability crowd has a waiting list of over 5,000 people, some of whom have had to wait for 10 years to get the necessary Medicaid services that are provided to people who we get that aid to. It's lasted too long. There's too many people on it, and that is definitely a priority of mine. And I was so pleased to see that the legislature took the first step toward that this year. And I was so pleased that I was able to be a vocal spokesperson for taking that action. We need to be careful about what we spend money on, but we definitely need to take care of the people who need it. My position on taxes is simply stated, and that is that tax relief, tax cuts should be directed towards those who need it the most and not those who need it the least. And unfortunately, it's going to take more Democrats in the Kansas legislature to bring that about. The Republicans prove over and over again that they are tilted towards their large donors. They are tilted towards the wealthy, and that is unacceptable.
Thank you, Vic. Okay, now we're down to the last one, which gives you a little bit more time and freedom to tell voters a little bit more about yourself. So this question, and again, feel free to take a little bit more time if you want, but why should voters in Senate District 19, which we know spans from eastern Topeka to northwestern Lawrence, vote for you? And feel free to add a little bit more about yourself as you do that. So Vic, can you start us off on that one?
Yes, I can. Thank you. I grew up a farm boy, actually. A lot of people don't know that because I've lived my entire adult life outside of college within the city of Topeka. But I grew up on a farm just not too far from Topeka. I went to high school, Rossville High, a small town. I don't think that whoever gets elected to the 19th district should overlook that we have, besides the big cities of Lawrence and Topeka, we have two very important communities in Lecompton and Tecumseh. And I think my background prior to college will help me understand the problems that surround even those smaller towns. I think with so few Democratic senators in the Kansas Senate, we need someone who can hit the ground running, not someone who's going to take these last 2 years of Governor Kelly's term to learn the ins and outs, the rules and regs, the people involved in the state Senate. As you noted earlier, you said I served a short time. Actually, it seemed like a very long 2 years when I was there. But I've been in the Senate 2 years. I've been in the House a number of years. And I think I am the one who can best speak for the people of this district when it comes to fulfilling a fruitful 2 years of Governor Kelly's term. I have a bachelor's degree from Emporia State. I have a law degree from Washburn. As I said earlier, higher education is, and what it's done for me and how it has blessed me is so important that I want to make sure that that remains a priority for whoever serves the 19th district. Topeka no longer has a Democratic senator. We had a Democratic senator or more ever since reapportionment, or excuse me, ever since one person, one vote was ruled unconstitutional. We've always had a Democratic senator until this last term. I'm so pleased that the longest serving senator that we've had in the 19th district, Senator Anthony Hensley, who I served with those 2 years, has endorsed my candidacy. I am looking forward to serving alongside Senator Marcy Francisco, the long-serving legislator. Those of us in Lawrence, or who represent Lawrence, are going to miss the leadership and the experience of Senator Tom Holland. Again, through reapportionment, that district was redrawn to make it impossible for him to run. And I think it's important that the Lawrence delegation be bolstered by someone who's served in the legislature and can lead the various fights that we've talked about today. Again, thank you. Thanks, ShaMecha. Thank Patrick for being here. I do want to say that on the abortion front, there is good news. What we need to change the dialogue on abortion is more female legislators. I am ready to guarantee that when the dust settles on June 3rd and August the 6th, we will see a record number of women candidates on the Democratic ticket. ShaMecha, that's not an endorsement of you. Your time's another day, another place, but I have always said that in order to change the dialogue, in order to change the mindset, ultimately in the legislature, we need more women. And I will say it, we need more Democrat women. I am so disappointed that the other side is lockstep behind Kansans for Life, and it is time that we changed the mindset and we brought them back to what people told us they wanted from August the 2nd. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this forum.
Thank you, Vic. All right, Patrick.
Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to listen today, or maybe some months in the future on YouTube. I've seen from my time, growing up, two parents as teachers, and then 5.5 years on active duty, and the last 3 in the Naval Reserves, that Kansas and the country face incredibly significant challenges. I served for 2 years on board the USS Ronald Reagan out in the Western Pacific, based out of Japan, with a special forces team in Bahrain, and then most recently at the Office of Naval Intelligence and at the Pentagon. I've seen the challenges that we face, and I took an oath to protect this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I've seen those enemies, both foreign and domestic. I saw the attack on January 6th, and the way that we start to set things right, that we get things back on the right track, and that we take care of the people that need it the most, is in local races like this. And I think that my background, especially both in the military and 2 parents as teachers and a dad that farmed for over 40 years until high interest rates and drought made him drive his combines back in, is that the legislature can do a lot if it wants to, but we have to elect more partners, and we have to elect a younger generation, a new generation of leadership that's thinking about the future. Right now, if you look at Kansans age 17 to 25, only 20% of them are eligible to serve in the military like I did. And that's the direct result of failures in public health, public education, and public safety. We're not making the right investments in the state's greatest resource, which is its young people. And that's why we have such a hard time keeping them in Kansas, whether if they go away for school or after they graduate from one of our state's institutions. I am going to work to make Kansas the best place it can be for me and my family, for my wife, for my mom, and make sure that we're doing everything we can for the 19th Senate District to make it a great place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And ShaMecha?
Thanks, Ty. Ultimately, I think the conversation that I bring to this forum, to this race, is about the importance of grassroots organization and the importance of partnership and working with those who are talking to people who know the needs within the community and understand what that day-to-day struggle is for those individuals within the community, and being able to communicate that up to the state level. As a neighborhood leader, I see over and over again that yes, I can impact change by, bringing dumpsters to the neighborhood so folks can get rid of their junk, or I can talk to the city council about infrastructure needs, the county about healthcare access. But ultimately, what I have found is that systematic challenges are at the state level. We are not addressing the policies that are most affecting how people are living at the base ground. And so knowing that as a neighborhood leader, understanding that most of the challenges that people are facing are coming from outdated policies that are not responsive to their needs, it is imperative to have a perspective that understands those needs at the state level. I can recognize, and I don't take that as an endorsement, Vic, that more women need to be put into legislative positions, but I think that there is something to be said about the fact that you mentioned that. I am a woman. I am a low income individual. I have a child that I'm trying to get through public high school. And that is a experience that a lot of people in District 19 can relate to. I have worked in Lawrence Public Schools. I understand what young people are looking for out of their legislators, and they are looking for people who are about justice. They want people who are collaborative. They want people who are about shaking up the status quo, and people who look different, talk different than what they're used to. And that is me in a nutshell. I bring empathy, I bring heart, I bring a willingness to have very difficult conversations. I bring creativity to this conversation. And District 19 is primed, is poised for showing Kansas the way and saying, you know what, you don't have to rely on tried and true methods. You can get creative, you can be innovative in how you address solutions that Kansans need so that they can have thriving lives. And so I appreciate folks listening today. It's such an honor to be in this space, regardless of the outcome. And I invite you to learn more about me and, see, who I am in real life. I'm just as awkward and introverted as I am on camera. So it's a wonderful experience. I couldn't let it pass me by. And I look forward to what August 6th brings. Thank you.
Thank you for that, ShaMecha. So really quick, I want to share with everyone, you might not have noticed this on my first slide, so let me show it again so you can see what their websites are. So you can see here on the left, right? So ShaMechaForKansas.com, VicMillerForSenate.com, and PatrickForKansas.com. One of the things we like to say in Women for Kansas is every election cycle, you should either be the candidate or be supporting a candidate. You can support candidates with time, volunteering, or with your funds, or all of the above. So I'm sure our candidates here would welcome all of that support, which you can do at their websites. As they mentioned, I want to show you one other thing. You will vote for one of these candidates, and I guess still someone else could file by January 3rd if they wanted. I'm sorry, by June 3rd if they wanted. Vote for one candidate in the Democratic primary. That's why we keep talking about August 6th, right? So August 6th is the primary. That's where these candidates will be running against each other. You should also check your voter registration, your voting location, your polling place, and your early voting options, depending on which county that you live in. So Douglas County or Shawnee County. For the most part, you need to be declared as a Democrat to vote in this election. I believe that if you are unaffiliated, you can declare on August 6th. But if you are a Republican, you need to change your party affiliation. I think it's by June 3rd as well. So if you are registered as a Democrat by June 3rd, or you are unaffiliated on August 6th, you can go in and vote for these candidates. And one other reminder, as I said at the beginning, June 15th at 1:30 p.m. at the Lawrence Public Library, we're going to have an in-person candidate forum with the Douglas County District Attorney candidates. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I'm so grateful that you took the time. I'm so grateful we have technology like this so I can actually be home parenting while I'm doing this, which is what I am doing. You can also visit womenforkansas.org. That is where you can learn more about our organization. We also would appreciate your membership and support. You can click on membership and support on our website. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, News We Can Use, which tells you about all kinds of events like this. We have chapters all over the state. Again, get out and vote on August 6th. And thank you. Thank you to everyone, our candidates and our viewers. Happy Mother's Day weekend. Goodbye, all.